Welcome to our panel discussion. And I have the pleasure to have an excellent panel here. Many you have already experienced today, but some are new in the panel and they will introduce themselves when they have the mic. So we will see who sits on the panel. It's not just an AUTOSAR assembly, it's even other consortia which are also here, and welcome to our discussion on the role of AUTOSAR in SDV and future mobility. And one of the topics we have, and we heard it today, is we are all have the same idea. We have to develop towards the ecosystem for future mobility realization. And we have to find and define the roles which we can play together, in which way we can collaborate. And one question could occur, why do we at the end need an ecosystem? What's the reason for it? What would be your answer? Would you like to answer, Steve?
Sure, I'll start with that. Why do we need an ecosystem? So I'm Steve Crum. I wear two hats, at least. Today I'm AUTOSAR regional, North America regional spokesperson. I also am the executive director of Covisa, and for the sake of this panel, I'm going to wear my Covisa hat. Why do we need an ecosystem? Because the problems that the automotive industry are facing cannot be solved by a single organization. They never have been able to, although there's been some very good products and services delivered in the automotive industry. But today, the complexities of the software-defined vehicle, the complexities of safety, and what the driver and the vehicle occupant requires and expects from a vehicle, from a connected vehicle especially, which is even more so with an autonomous vehicle. It's just the requirements are just so broad that you need an ecosystem. And when I say ecosystem, I mean everything from OEMs all the way down to startups, startup organizations that are bringing in new innovative ideas. They don't have the money or the fun or the gravitas to deliver it, but they're really good ideas, and those can only be incubated in an ecosystem.
Yeah. Francesca?
Thank you. My name is Francesca Forestieri, and I'm the automotive lead for Global Platform. I would just add to that our experience as sort of the new kids on the block on this topic is the fact that we have so many people who have been working on some of these concepts for a very long time. And so the different approaches that we use is something based on how we can learn together. So the vehicle, as you mentioned now, you have extended services, you have value-added services, but you also have so many different players, and you have to be able to find a way to create those trusted services. And that means providing a way to engage with everyone.
Anyone else? Well, probably I have an additional one. You know, if you look on the future mobility systems, there are more players than just the automotive industry. So this will, from my point of view, even put new challenges to our current development situation.
I think a different word for ecosystem could be platform, and it seems that platforms at the moment are quite successful business cases, right? Whoever operates a platform is obviously not in the worst situation to earn money with the end customers. And an ecosystem building such a platform, at least in the, my word, non-differentiating part, really can enable, and the second word here for me, which is important, is scale. So if the ecosystem can build a platform which has a certain scale, which attract people, customers, but all the third-party players, that's something which is interesting. And you can build this platform either by yourself, and sometimes if you are happy, like companies like Google, you have the chance to build this just by yourself. What I think, building a platform for end customers in the automotive space, I think that's a little bit late. And so the only thing how this could work, to have at least a significant scale, not a big scale, we'll never reach 1 billion mobile devices in the automotive industry, but at least a scale which is attractive for third parties, that needs to be an ecosystem and a platform. And that means we would need to collaborate. Everyone is not only not capable of doing it, but it's also too small to leverage scaling effects in the market.
Okay, Thomas, you want to? No. So I have one question. You know, today we saw different forms of collaboration. Some which is already takes a more clearer picture is the collaboration between AUTOSAR and Covisa. I think the ongoing discussions between AUTOSAR and Eclipse show also some movement in the same direction, even if there might be some different legal aspects which have to be resolved. So what do you expect, or what you are looking for with respect to collaboration forms and exchanges between the different partners in future? Do we have a standard model in which we want to work together, like the last picture I saw with the satellite, with the planets and the moon, or what is the right concept for our collaboration in this ecosystem?
So maybe I take this one, Michael Niklas Höret from the AUTOSAR Steering Committee. So I think there is no one size fits all, and this is also because a lot of organizations out there have different core philosophies, right? So I think collaboration only can work in the ecosystem if you allow the collaborating partners to still stick to the core philosophy, but make the integration on a combined collaborative area, like with Covisa on interfaces and so on and so forth, but never try to convince the other organization that they have to change their core philosophy that it will work. Compromise, I think, and that's also the reason why I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all pattern for the collaboration between organizations. But of course, if you have established certain collaboration frameworks, you can reapply them if you have a similar combination of core philosophies. And this is, I think, will be the main aspect in collaboration in the future, that we have enough patterns that we can apply to different collaboration partners.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Thomas?
Yeah, my name is Thomas Rüping. I'm working for Bosch, and I'm currently the AUTOSAR chairperson. I also see it very similar. We need to be very flexible, and from my point of view, this can go from a direction to agree on maybe common interfaces, common API between the organizations and what they are doing, to at the other end having and establishing common projects between organizations. So we need to be really flexible here.
I would just add to that I believe that it's not just about looking at specific, for us, just projects, but we've been looking at how to try to bring together what is sort of the minimum common services that we need to do. And it may be a least common denominator, but it's something that allows people to be competitive and have differentiators, but still allow for flexibility for responding to the needs that are on the market as they evolve.
Okay.
Yeah, from my perspective, I'm a little bit jealous, right? Because as AUTOSAR and Covisa, you can more or less define the complete set of rules by yourself, and you've changed something, and you get the commitment of all your members. You just change it, right? As an open source organization, we have this, I would not call it overhead because that sounds negative, but we have this legacy of the open source movement for the last 30 years, right? So just to make a very interesting anecdote, there's a JSON license, and there's a line in the sentence in the JSON license telling that you're allowed to do only good things, but not evil things. And that's the reason why the JSON license is not an open source license, because open source requests that the license does not restrict the field of endeavor. So that's a challenge, right? Because we have this 40 years discussion around open source that has, we cannot compromise on everything, because we are an open source organization. We need to stick to the values of open source. So if we would need to find a solution for the IP discussion with AUTOSAR, we have something where we as Eclipse Foundation we don't have freedom of action. We need to make sure that we at least stick to the values we have. And don't get me wrong, I like the values we have and the principles, but it bounds us to a certain extent, whereas organizations like ours have other challenges with this it's not clear, for example, who owns the IP. But if you would get all the people to the table, you would have a more freedom to make different approaches than we currently would have in certain aspects.
Just one more thing. The way we are working with our fairly diverse ecosystem is that internally, of course, with our members, we deal with the development of our specifications and the details, but we also have a consultative body where we're able to address the topics and try to get the priorities from everybody who's sitting around the table. That helps us with our IPR issues.
What are the biggest impediments which we have to overcome in creating this future ecosystem? I've learned you are a part-time lawyer, meanwhile, so probably it's a question which you can answer, or some of your colleagues.
I mean, we are always talking a lot about legal contracts, legal frameworks, and so on and so forth, right? But at the end of the day, I don't think that this is one of the biggest impediments. It's something that you have to deal with. I think the biggest impediment is finding people which are willing to collaborate and commit to that, right? So at the end of the day, if there is a strategic interest, if there is a commitment to collaboration, there will always be solutions found, right? It's maybe not the best solution, it's maybe not the ideal solution, it's maybe not the fastest solution, but it's a solution with which organizations can live, right? If we take the legal topics as excuses, we have managed to hit the worst impediment, and this is the commitment.
I'll add to that I think that it's very easy for technologists to want to solve technical problems, but a lot of the challenges facing the automotive industry are not technology problems, they're business challenges. And if we as collaborative organizations can define the problem as a business value issue, not just a technology value issue, then I think we'll get a lot more people around the table. I think that organizations are willing to bend the rules a little bit on legal frameworks and participation and that sort of thing when they see that their business, and when I say their business, I'm saying things like delivering driver delighting services to their drivers or to the vehicle occupants. And so if we can begin to paint a picture as an automotive industry of that technology can actually produce business value, I think that might change the rules a little bit in terms of how we collaborate.
Okay. Thomas?
Yeah, so for AUTOSAR, I think it's very clear the biggest challenge is really the legal aspects, yeah, for the moment, yeah, and this is not so easy to solve, to change things. But of course, we are doing what's possible, yeah, to change things also for the future. And maybe if we are doing new things, yeah, we will have a new framework, yeah, having things more open, more flexible. And the other challenge for AUTOSAR is the financing model, because this is also built on the IP usage and so on. And therefore, it's not so easy to change things here, yeah, because it's really basic regulations in the AUTOSAR framework. Yeah.
Okay. You?
Well, I don't have as much of an AUTOSAR perspective, but what I would say that we have found is that technology is a real enabler to allow people to cooperate on the things that they're interested in. And in Global Platform's experience, we've had to have a lot of frenemies sit together and develop solutions, because a Visa or a mobile phone doesn't work if it doesn't work for everybody. So we think that there's a real value in sitting around the table and deciding that we can agree on some things, even if we can't agree on 80%. But there's 20% we really need to work together on. And that's what the way we're approaching the topic.
Okay, thank you. So my next question I have is, we have heard today about the opening strategy of AUTOSAR. And so the question for me was, in listening to the different presentations, is AUTOSAR as a standardization organization too slow? What should we improve? Or is it an either-or situation between open source and classical standardization? Or what is the right answer for the future to really have a common understanding where we want to go and what we have to achieve and what are the different roles?
So this question contains several pieces of discussion points. So let's take one by one, starting with the is a classical standard based on specification slower than an open source implementation code first approach, right? What's better, I think is also a little bit hidden, and I would say there is no clear black or white answer, right? I mean, to a certain degree, and we just before the panel we had a small discussion, we're discussing about that also with other colleagues, is to a certain degree code first is always a value to understand what is actually the problem you want to solve, how to solve it, and so on and so forth. So there is a big value with trying out stuff from the beginning, right? That's also one of the reasons why after the experiences we had in the rollout of AUTOSAR Classic into the market, we introduced for AUTOSAR Adaptive a joint demonstrator, right? So which is growing, and which we also use to validate the AUTOSAR specifications, because we see the value in joint developed source code to prove that stuff works, right? On the other hand side, specifications help you to if you come more from the specification side, help you to have a more restrictive framework, a more restrictive architecture, which of course in the code first also will appear, but later. So the question is, what one you have first, right? So if you have something running first, code first might be your go-to solution. If you're more like you want to have a clear architecture from the beginning, maybe a more specification related standard will be the one that you want to choose. So, and I think if you take both of those aspects, I don't think that there is a differentiation in speed after all.
And I think maybe the question is even wrong, because even from our side, we do not challenge that we would need specification. I think it's more the question, how do I come to the specification? Or sitting with 20 people in a room together, just working on a white paper or on a green field and start to think about what could be the stuff we need to specify? Or do I start with an implementation where I can try out if things works or works not, and then finally come to specification? And I think one very important point is the life cycle of the product. So why specifications are so important. So I started today my presentation with that AUTOSAR was founded in 2002, right? I think if I remember my figures right, AWS was founded in 2006. That's 16 years. I think we see still cars on the road which has been built 16 years ago, right? So and if you now think about the cars which hit the road today and with a certain software, are we really sure that in 16 years from now the software is still operating in the same cloud environment? So I think for this, specifications are all the very important for the long-term sustainability and quality, and mandatory for OEMs and for the automobile industry to have. I think the challenge is more how to come to that specification. And I think that could be something where we, with try and error, or others call it agile, maybe kind of a fast approach, to have all the maybe more tailored specification. One of the challenges, I didn't mention that today, is that if you set people in a room to specify, they specify. And if they are done, so nobody says stop, let me call it that way. Then there's the next corner case, and maybe we need to think about that corner case, and maybe we need to think about that corner case. So specifications just tend to grow because people are there to specify. If you start from the implementation, sometimes is, we have been able to cover everything with our implementation. Why would we implement more? So usually in software development, you do not tend to overdevelop at the end of the day. And so that could be all, let's say, a little bit a limiting factor And I think at the end of the day, I strongly believe it's a trade-off between the two, implementation and specification. And yeah, so I think it's not a question, do we only need implementation? We need for sure both. The question is for the one or the others, how do we come to the specification? And especially in the automotive industry, we have a life cycle of 15 years and more. There will be no way without specifications.
I'd just like to add to that, we're working with SAE, as my colleague was mentioning, and what we have found is that for this J3101 about hardware protected security environments, they have been able to specify a broad glossary of how to describe those environments. But in terms of what each of those environments means in terms of the details for implementation, that's currently out of scope. And so that's how we're working with them, because we come from the bottom up and they come from the top down, and hopefully we meet in the middle.
Okay, so I come to the next question. I saw in some of the slides you have shown some framing of the areas which Covisa is addressing, areas in which Eclipse is active, some other areas in which ASAM is active, and so forth. All of the consortia showed some areas, but they also showed some overlaps. And so I heard we have a shortage of resources. How can we resolve that, we avoid double work, that we avoid conflicting activities, and what is your approach to solve it?
Well, I think my wife answers that question every day. Communicate, right? It's like just talk to me, right? And I think that communication is probably, I don't know, 75% of the challenge, is that we all get heads down into our own missions and visions and way of working and targets and milestones, and this is what we do well, and we feel comfortable doing what we do well. But we get so busy doing that we don't see the value of communicating to other organizations and laying out, asking the question, what if? What if Covisa and AUTOSAR actually could work together to produce something of value? What if Eclipse and SOFI, and what if? And I think that we have to have that dialogue a lot more, as opposed to protecting our turf and saying, well, this is where I feel comfortable doing what I want to do. Now, there's sometimes restrictions that keep that from happening, members only versus open, and all sorts of other things. But I still believe that there's ways to overcome those hurdles, just as we've been able to find with the legal framework that the AUTOSAR steering committee is pushing into the openness strategy and so forth. There's a way if there's a will, as they say. And so, communicate.
Yeah, for me it's even different. For me, the word overlap is not the right word. So all the boxes which are covered, so we had the biggest block, right? So we can say we overlap with everything, but it's not meaning that we would like to do something in parallel. So for me, it's more like, to make that picture more accurate, we would have to stand out all these other blocks because we would like to integrate them. It's not double work, it's really putting the things together. What was when I mentioned this initiative of initiatives, putting these things together, it's not that we would like to be in competition. No, we would like to use the results of that other initiatives to finally maybe build then open source projects, and I think that's a discussion we have with AUTOSAR as well, to build these things together under one governance, and that's not necessarily even by the Eclipse Foundation. You can even copy and paste the Eclipse Foundation governance, but I think just to add these things together, that they're easy consumable. But for me, at the end of the day, the quality of all this initiative and all the combination is the simple answer to the question, can someone who needs to develop an end customer function easily consume what we build? And he does not have to care about that's from AUTOSAR, that's from Covisa, and that's from SOFI, and that's from SDV. You would like to have a solution he can use and can build, so a platform he can implement his function on top of. And nobody cares, and he should not care from which initiative this comes.
Yeah, and historically seen, a lot of the initiative has been founded for a concrete problem. And that was very, very good working, because we split our problems into issues, into domains, into technologies, right? Now we are recognizing, okay, the biggest problem is not to solve a specific problem, but to combine all of the problems together, right? So this is called SDV at the end of the day. And now we are suddenly in the situation, so okay, I have a good expertise in hardware acceleration, but I have no fucking clue how a cloud architecture looks like. Or I have a good expertise in bus protocols, but I have no idea how open source principles work. So for me, this is exactly also what I said in the beginning, each organization has a core value and a core asset, right? So don't take away their core asset. There's still technology they have built because of a reason, but what we are all struggling at the moment to put this technology together to a bigger working system, right? And this is the challenge, and this is why we should talk, and I like the communication example with your wife very much, because I can relate to that. And this is really what's happening, where we're coming from. So we were able to solve with different experts in different consortia concrete problems, but now we are combining this into a bigger thing, and the actual problem is not the problems the consortia have solved for themselves, but combining the stuff to a bigger functioning picture where a developer at the end who doesn't care, as Michael mentioned, what is below that, can use all of these technologies from the past in a combined manner.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is, we have heard the will to collaborate, and so my question is, what is the expected time frame in which we can create this ecosystem of collaborating teams? Do you have a guess? Not tomorrow, I know.
in the next 1 to 100 months. No, just kidding. You were asking for a time frame. I mean, this really depends, right? I mean, as you see, it's not the first time that we are talking to each other, so there are exchanges and there are ongoing activities, and so I hope that in the second half of this year we can communicate with some organization jointly something new, right? But at the moment I cannot say it will be solved in 2023 or in 2024, or it will be solved only in 5 years or in 10 years. But there are very productive discussions that I personally like a lot between the organizations, and this is basically, it feels like a little bit, we are in America, right? They started in the East Coast and they go west, so it feels like this go west feeling, right? Talking to the other organizations and see how we can collaborate better in the future.
And I can just speak for the relation between SDV and AUTOSAR. What's interesting is, so the organization who currently have problems at SDV to onboard their source code are the same organizations which are active in AUTOSAR. So we're not talking about a disjunct set of different organizations. These are the same organizations. So they have a mutual interest on both sides to get this thing solved. And I think that's the reason why I think we get this thing solved, right? It's not that there's a group of people, organization on the AUTOSAR side, and a completely different group of organizations. No, we have the same members. 6 out of the 9 core members are now members of the SDV working group. I think 7 out of the 8 governing board members of SOFI are members of the software-defined vehicle working group. So the same organizations who faces the problems may all have the key in their hands to solve these problems. And that's exactly what we need to leverage on, what we need to build on.
I think my comment is that we could get an analysis paralysis of this problem, and we could sit around and architect the perfect one ring to rule them all, right? And that is the absolute wrong way to go. We have to take an agile approach. We have to be happy with small wins, with small bites of the elephant, with whatever the analogy is. And if 2 organizations can co-produce something and actually deliver it, that's a win. And it can be built upon, and 2 other organizations, and eventually I think the avalanche continues until the industry figures out, like Michael said, that it's the same, it's largely the same organizations, that, oh, gee, we could just do this together, and we could end up better off in the end. And so that'd be my thought.
And maybe to add on, was just coming to my mind. I said that AUTOSAR was initially built on pain, because organizations struggle to handle the complexity of more and more use in the car. And you have been successful to ease the pain. And maybe one of the advantages you had at that point in time it was just the automotive industry. What I see right now with electromobility and features, end customer facing features, end customer facing features. Wow, end customer facing features is that there's again the same pain, but now unfortunately we have other players from different ecosystems in the game, and that makes it even more difficult. So we have discussions internally, people saying, hey Michael, if we don't have the results in 6 months, I have problems to argue how we could continue. And what I'm not saying that, but I'm thinking at that moment, what is the alternative? So what other options do you have to collaborate? I think at least we can agree that nobody can do it just by himself. So what are the other options? What are the other options to compete against new market entrants and other things? What against platform companies? What are the alternatives? And for the moment, I'm happy to learn about alternatives, but I think collaboration for me is most likely the best. Is it in English saying the best horse you can bet on, something like this? Right. Not sure that it works, but I've never heard about a very convincing other alternative. And just doing it by yourself, for sure, is, for my understanding, but that's my personal opinion, is not such an alternative.
I would just, I would 100% agree with you in terms of the aspect about collaboration. I would also say that given the fact that there are so many different organizations sitting around the table, there's also a lot more manpower behind it, right? So the ability to make progress is actually exponentially great. And you don't have to start reinventing the wheel, because you can, everybody has a piece of core competency that they bring to the table. And so it is a fertile ground from which we can all benefit.
So let's come to our last question. Can organizations, bodies like those represented here on this panel actually get to the place where they are co-designing and co-developing already integrated solutions?
Yes.
Good.
If we can't, let's all go home.
That's the purpose of the third-party collaboration day.
So I would like to thank my panelists. I'm happy to hear that collaboration is on its way and we are about to create the ecosystem. I'm quite confident, and I thank you all for your contributions, and I hope you enjoyed the panel discussion.